and can't go.
Kensington Ave?
I'm not going to tell you where you can and can't go. I'm just saying it cannot be right here. The permit does it.
Homeless junkie. You can see I lost 30% of my bicep, all as a result of silencing.
Yo, boss.
Where you from, Terry?
Out here in Kensington.
All right.
Out here doing it.
All right.
Out here living the dream, man. This place is as bad as it is. It can be even worse, man. But, you know, out here, we try to survive every day, man, if we can.
Have you ever seen a place change so fast that the world barely realizes what's happening until it's already too late? Because in the final months of 2025, something unfolded on one street in Philadelphia that shook the entire conversation about addiction and homelessness in America. Kensington, a neighborhood many people only know from viral clips and headlines, reached a point I never imagined I'd witness with my own eyes. And that's why the title Kensington's Final Zombie Zone, Inside Philadelphia's Fentanyl Apocalypse 2025, and the thumbnail Kensington Fentanyl Crisis 2025 aren't exaggerations. They're signals of just how urgently this story needs to be told. As I walked through Kensington at the end of 2025, I kept asking myself, how did this street transform so dramatically? What pushed things to this breaking point? And why does it feel like we're watching a crisis grow in real time while the rest of the country goes on like nothing is happening? The deeper I went, the more I realized this isn't just a neighborhood. It's a warning, a mirror, and a human story too powerful to ignore.
She's high all day. That's it.
Yeah.
It's a never-ending cycle.
It's not the place to be. This place is dangerous, and a lot of people don't, realize that. People come out here from all types of different areas, and they get stuck down here. They say, once you go to Kensington, you're not coming back. And it's true.
How Kensington became America's warning sign as I walked deeper into Kensington in the final days of 2025. One thing became impossible to ignore: the number of people trying to rest wherever they could. On sidewalks, in narrow alleys, near storefronts, or tucked into small corners that offered even a little sense of safety. It wasn't disorder. It was exhaustion. It was people who had run out of places to go. And the more I observed, the clearer it became that Kensington didn't reach this point overnight. Because behind every person lying on a piece of cardboard or leaning against a brick wall is a long story the world rarely hears. What shocked me was not the image itself, but the reality that this has become normal for so many. A daily routine shaped not by choice, but by circumstances that push them out of housing, out of stability, and sometimes out of hope. This is where you see the real foundations of the crisis: rising rents, untreated trauma, medical bills, job losses, and substances so powerful that people cling to any space that feels a little safer than the last. And as I stood there, watching people wake up on cold sidewalks while others quietly walked past, I realized Kensington isn't just struggling. It's showing America what happens when systems crack, when support fades, and when entire communities are left to survive one day at a time. This neighborhood isn't an isolated incident. It's a warning of how easily any city can reach this point if we don't understand what's happening here.
From real people tonight. Yes, they're high. They are intoxicated. They're under the influence, but there are humans. Each one of them has a story of how they ended up here on Kensington, and each one needs help to get off the streets.
The human stories hidden behind every face. What struck me most as I moved through Kensington wasn't just the number of people trying to survive the streets. It was the quiet stories they carried, written in their eyes long before a single word was spoken. You start noticing small things. Someone carefully folding a blanket as if it were the last thing they could call their own. Someone guarding a backpack like it holds their entire life. Someone waking up slowly on a sidewalk and taking a moment to gather themselves before facing another day. And every time I passed someone, I kept wondering the same thing. Who were they before this? What dreams did they have when life still felt steady? It's easy for the world to look at Kensington and see a crisis, but when you stand here in person, you realize it's not a crisis of numbers. It's a crisis of people who once had homes, jobs, families, routines, and hopes that didn't just disappear. They slowly faded through years of struggle, one setback at a time. I kept thinking about how many of them probably never imagined they'd end up sleeping outside or fighting to stay warm through the night. And yet, despite everything, there's a fragile sense of humanity here. People sharing food, checking on each other, offering a small kindness when they barely have enough for themselves. These moments remind you that no matter how hard life becomes, no one stops being human. And every person here has a story worth being heard.
Now, this time, I've been out here for like 4 months. My drug addiction has taken over my life.
How long ago did you start using?
About 25 years ago.
How old were you?
I was 16.
How people slowly fall into a crisis they never chose. The longer I spent in Kensington, the more I understood something most people never stop to think about. Almost no one here imagined they would ever end up in a place like this. The journey into homelessness or addiction isn't sudden or dramatic the way movies sometimes show it. It's slow, gradual, and filled with moments that feel small when they happen, but heavy when they pile up. I met people who once had steady jobs, apartments they were proud of, and lives that looked completely normal from the outside. But then, life shifted. A company shut down. A medical bill drained their savings. A relationship that was supposed to be their support system fell apart. And with every little setback, the ground beneath them became a little less stable. What stood out to me most was how quietly the fall happens. It doesn't begin with someone losing everything overnight. It begins with missing a few days of work because of an injury, then struggling to catch up on rent. It begins with sleeping at a friend's place just for a week, which slowly turns into 3 weeks, then 3 months, until that door eventually closes too. It begins with trying to manage emotional pain or untreated trauma alone, because therapy is too expensive and help feels out of reach. And when someone is overwhelmed enough, even a small escape, something to feel calm, even for a moment, becomes tempting. By the time fentanyl entered their lives, many were already carrying years of stress, loneliness, or physical pain. And once it takes hold, the decline becomes even harder to stop. People try to fight it, but the drug is stronger than the support they have, stronger than the stability they lost, and stronger than the resources available to help them recover. Suddenly the slide becomes faster. Missing work becomes losing work becomes losing housing, and losing housing becomes sleeping outside. And from there, survival becomes the priority, finding a meal, staying warm, staying safe, staying awake. What shocked me most was realizing how easily this could happen to anyone living close to the edge. especially in a country where one unexpected bill or one emotional crisis can change everything. No one I met planned to live on the streets or depend on substances. Their lives were shaped by a mix of circumstances that collided at the worst possible time. And without a strong support system to catch them, they slipped through the cracks of a society that moves too fast to notice the fall. How fentanyl quietly pulled people into a deeper struggle as I spent more time in Kensington. One question stayed with me. How did fentanyl take over so many lives this quickly? And the answer, I realized, is far more human and far more heartbreaking than most people think. Many of the people I spoke with told me they never set out to use something so strong. It started with trying to ease emotional pain, physical injuries, or loneliness they didn't know how to carry. Some first used medication after accidents or surgeries. Some tried to escape old memories, and others were simply looking for a moment of calm in a life filled with stress. But over time, the drugs available on the street changed. What used to be milder substances slowly disappeared, replaced by fentanyl, cheaper, more accessible, and far more powerful than what anyone expected. And once it entered their routine, life began shifting in ways they didn't fully understand. Days blended together. Energy faded. Decisions became harder. People who once worked, laughed, and lived full lives suddenly found themselves struggling to stay steady, to stay aware, to stay connected. And on the street, it shows. Not through anything graphic, but through small moments, someone losing balance, someone seeming distant or unfocused, someone swaying gently as if their body is trying to keep up with their mind. These are not scenes, they're signs of people fighting something stronger than themselves. Watching this happen in Kensington made me realize that fentanyl didn't just harm individuals, it quietly reshaped an entire community, turning everyday struggles into battles no one should have to face alone. The emotional atmosphere that lives on every corner. The longer I stayed in Kensington, the more I realized that this neighborhood carries an emotional weight that's impossible to understand through quick clips or viral videos. There's a certain feeling in the air here, a heaviness mixed with quiet resilience that you can only absorb when you walk slowly, when you look around without rushing, when you allow yourself to truly notice the human beings living this reality every day. In the early mornings, before the noise of the city fully wakes up, you see people gently rising from sidewalks, dusting off blankets, adjusting backpacks, and gathering whatever little they have. There's no chaos in these moments, just a tired routine shaped by nights spent outdoors, where comfort is rare and rest comes in fragments. You notice how carefully people fold their belongings, because those few items are all they own, and losing even one thing would mean starting over again. As the day unfolds, the emotional atmosphere becomes even more complex. Yes, there is struggle, but there is also companionship. People greet each other with nods, share water, offer small snacks, or check on someone who looks unwell. In a place many outsiders see only as dangerous, you find kindness happening quietly, naturally, without expectation or noise. It's the kind of kindness that reminds you that people don't stop caring for each other just because life has been unkind to them. And there's a sort of unspoken understanding among everyone here. No one has much, but everyone knows what it feels like to go without. That shared experience creates a community that most people on the outside would never imagine exists. But you can't ignore the sadness either. There's a certain look in people's eyes, a mix of exhaustion, fear, hope, and uncertainty that stays with you long after you leave. You see someone sitting on a curb staring at the ground for minutes at a time, lost in thought. You see someone pacing slowly, trying to stay warm. You see someone leaning against a wall, taking deep breaths as if preparing for the challenges another day will bring. These are not dramatic moments, but they are deeply human ones, and they remind you that behind every person struggling here is someone who once laughed easily, slept comfortably, and felt secure in the world. What surprised me most was that even in the middle of all this hardship, there is still a presence of hope, a small one, but real. It lives in the connections people form, the help they offer each other, and the simple fact that every day, despite everything stacked against them, they keep going. Kensington may feel heavy, but it also reminds you that resilience can survive even in the harshest places, and that humanity doesn't disappear, it just gets overlooked. Why 2025 became the breaking point 300 words. By the end of 2025, something about Kensington felt unmistakably different. Not just harder, but heavier in a way that made it clear the neighborhood had reached a breaking point. You could sense it even before you spoke to anyone. There were more people trying to find a safe place to rest, more faces that looked new to the area, more individuals asking for basic help like food, warmth, or directions to a shelter. It wasn't just the same struggles continuing, it was the speed at which everything was growing. Housing prices in the city kept rising, and many who were already living paycheck to paycheck simply couldn't keep up. Shelters and outreach programs were stretched far beyond their limits, leaving people to survive on the streets even when they desperately wanted a way out. At the same time, the drug supply on the street changed faster than anyone could prepare for. Fentanyl wasn't new, but its strength, its unpredictability, and the new substances mixed into it made everyday life far more unstable for those already battling addiction. People told me they didn't always know what they were using anymore. The uncertainty made it even harder to stay steady or aware. And because of that, the challenges you saw on the street, people struggling to stand, to walk, to stay alert, became more common in late 2025 than ever before. The most striking thing was how visible the crisis became. Even early in the morning or late at night, the sidewalks were full of people searching for warmth, safety, or just a familiar face. You could feel the pressure building in the air, a sense that Kensington wasn't just dealing with one issue, but several overlapping failures happening at the same time. Standing there, I understood something. 2025 didn't create this crisis, but it pushed it to a point where no one could deny it anymore. What was once a neighborhood struggling quietly had become a reflection of deeper problems facing cities across America. A quiet hope in the middle of hardship. As I stepped away from Kensington at the end of 2025, I kept thinking about the people I had met, the faces I had passed, and the quiet moments that stayed with me long after I left. It's easy for the world to look at this neighborhood and see only struggle, but when you walk through it slowly, really paying attention, you notice something else. Small signs of hope that survive even when everything else seems to fade. You see it in the way people share warm food on cold nights, in the way they protect each other, in the way someone smiles at a stranger just to remind them they're not alone. And it made me realize that behind every difficult moment in Kensington, there's still a human spirit trying to hold on, trying to believe that life can get better, even when the path is hard. This place may be known for its crisis, but it's also filled with people who haven't given up on themselves or on one another. And as I walked away, I felt something unexpected. Not just sadness, but a quiet kind of gratitude for the reminder that compassion still exists, even in the darkest corners of America. If there's anything Kensington taught me, it's that every person deserves to be seen with understanding, not judgment, and that sometimes the smallest act of empathy can shine brighter than we think. What Kensington really teaches us in the end. Walking through Kensington didn't just show me the reality of one neighborhood. It revealed something much deeper about all of us. It reminded me that every struggle has a story, every face carries a history, and every person deserves to be seen without labels or judgment. This crisis isn't about a single street. It's about the quiet battles people face when life becomes heavier than they ever expected, and the way our country often overlooks those standing right at the edge. But even in the middle of hardship, there are moments that tell a different story. A shared meal, a kind gesture, a small smile that breaks through the weight of the day. These moments prove that hope doesn't disappear, even when everything else does. And as I leave Kensington behind, I'm left with one simple truth. Understanding begins with paying attention. When we look past the headlines and see the human beings behind them, we don't just learn about their struggle, we learn something about ourselves too. Maybe the real lesson of Kensington is this: compassion isn't a solution to every problem, but it's the first step toward seeing the world and each other with a little more humanity. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with me through this story. Kensington isn't an easy place to talk about, but these voices deserve to be heard all the way to the end. And if you want to keep exploring the realities, challenges, and human stories happening in communities across America, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I share videos like this every week, and every view, every comment, and every moment you spend watching truly helps these stories reach the people who need to see them. So stay connected, stay curious, and if this video made you think or feel something, even for a moment, consider subscribing and watching our future videos all the way through. It means more than you know.